The threat of tariffs from the new U.S. president is high on the agenda for the leaders of two of Europe's most powerful nations. Macron is hosting German Chancellor Olaf Scholz at the Elysee Palace in Paris. The French leader said Europeans need to protect their sovereignty, which includes supporting key economic sectors such as automobiles, steel, and chemical manufacturing. Scholz, who faces elections next month, acknowledged that dealing with Trump will not be easy.
President Trump is going to be a challenge. Europe and the US have long had a strong friendship and partnership, and we want to build on this foundation. President Trump has taken, or actually announced, a series of decisions already, and we will analyze them all with our European partners.
And we have our correspondents in France and Germany, Lisa Louis in Paris and DW's chief political editor, Michaela Küfner in Berlin. Lisa, we'll begin with you. This meeting between Macron and Scholz, it's taking place 2 days after the inauguration of Trump. How do they plan to address his threats regarding tariffs and defense?
Well, both leaders didn't really announce any concrete measures when it comes to their reaction to the yes, although obviously Donald Trump's re-election was the elephant in the room. Both leaders were saying that European nations needed to be strong, to stand side by side. But when you listen to the nuances of their announcement, you could actually make out quite a few differences. While Olaf Scholz was saying, for example, when it comes to defense, we need to increase our spending, he specifically mentioned NATO, which Emmanuel Macron, the French president, didn't do. He said we need to increase our spending, yes, but we need to create a European base for our own defence. And that is really one of the main underlying differences between France and Germany, and also shows that there is still a gap to bridge, really, despite these shows of unity like today.
And Michaela, we should say that Macron and Scholz have both been politically weakened at home. Scholz unlikely to be chancellor after February's elections here in Germany if the polls end up holding true. Where does that leave German-French relations at this crucial moment for Europe?
Yes, this really is a problem, and this is recognised across the board here in Berlin as well, that yes, there is a government in place, but it can't take any major decisions. And Olaf Scholz is struggling in those polls. His Social Democrats are currently the third, sometimes the fourth strongest party in these elections. They came on top last time around. So there is not much of a mandate left until the 23rd of February. And if the polls are anything to go by, it will be the conservative CDU-CSU led by Friedrich Merz, also a former businessman who worked for BlackRock, to take over as the next chancellor. He's already announced, he's a transatlanticist, he's already announced that he wants to keep up this very close link to the United States. He's much more business focused, and he keeps stressing how well he gets on with Emmanuel Macron. That's also another issue, that Emmanuel Macron and Olaf Scholz never quite spoke the same political language.
Okay, so that from the German side. Lisa, the view from Paris, please. What are the main expectations from the French government for cooperation with a future German government?
Well, as Michaela just mentioned, I think the main hope here is that these two leaders will simply get along, which was not the case between Scholz and Macron. Macron, with his, grandiose speeches, he wanted to really make big announcement, something that didn't really go down well in Germany. And Mr. Scholz came across as rather cold and sober here in France. But when you look at the details, even if, like polls are suggesting now, there were a conservative government in Germany in the future, even if these two leaders were to get along better than the current leaders, that wouldn't mean that the difference between, in the views between the two countries would actually get smaller. Because, for example, when it comes to economics, as Michaela just mentioned, France really has a very different attitude. The French government is more inclined to, to hand down subsidies, to be more protectionist, something that Germany is quite opposed to. So again, lots of discussions to be held in the future to find a common point of view here between these two countries.
Now, another issue, Lisa, where Berlin and Paris haven't always seen entirely eye to eye is, of course, Russia's war against Ukraine. What is the French position there?
Well, you know, one must say that both countries always underline that they stand side by side with Ukraine, that they're there to support the country in that war that Russia is waging on them. But when you look at the French side, it's very difficult to actually pin down the exact position of the French government. They don't really have red lines. Emmanuel Macron, for example, has been saying, you know, I can't rule out that at one point in the future there will be troops on the ground that come from Europe and that will be sent to Ukraine. That is something that Germany is very uncomfortable with. So it's difficult to make out what France really wants to do, but it's clear that they're much more open, much more courageous, so to say, in their approach to Ukraine and Russia.
And Michaela, does that resonate? How could Berlin potentially speak with one voice together with France on this issue? Is it possible at all?
Well, there needs to be more straight talk on business. And one concrete example is the Mercosur agreement that the European Union has agreed in principle with Latin American states. Here, the French draw a line because it comes down to a baguette and butter issue for the French. That's agricultural regulations. They don't want more competition to their dear agricultural markets. And these are key issues that France and Germany need to resolve so they can actually have a common line towards Donald Trump.
Well, thank you so much to both of you. That is DW's correspondent Lisa Louis in Paris and DW chief political editor Michaela Küfner in Berlin.